I appreciate you guys all coming here. You all represent different, sort of segments of the film, and so I want to talk to each of you in rapid succession. But I want to start with you, Betty Ann, because it's really your story. And my first question is: are you some kind of saint?
That's very funny. Not at
No,
all.
really. I mean, you are about as good a person that you could possibly imagine, at least up there on the screen. So, talk to me about what you did and why you did it.
Well, what I did and why I did it. Well, my brother was wrongly convicted of murder. He spent 18 years in prison, and after losing his appeals, he became suicidal. And it was during a conversation of me being upset with him for trying to commit suicide that he told me he cannot live in prison for the rest of his life as an innocent man. And in that conversation, it was decided that I would go back to school, go to law school, become his attorney, and get him out and show that he was innocent. And I said, "But Kenny, I have a GED." And he said, the promise was that, as long as I go back to school, he'll stay alive, no matter how long it took. So,
And what did that cost you? I mean, what sacrifices did you make?
well, there were sacrifices. I know there were, but I didn't really feel them because I feel like that was my life. I had children that were small, and I mean, they think of their childhood, and I went to all their games, but I took books with me,
Law books.
law books, undergrad books, a lot of always books.
Yeah, I noticed in the movie she's wearing Roger Williams' School of Law. Now, is that where you went?
That is exactly where I went to law
The
school.
only reason my daughter went to Roger Williams, and I kind of lit up. Oh, that's great.
She must know Aiden's Pub then in
Yeah,
Bristol, Rhode Island.
I'm going to talk to her right after this interview. I
Yeah.
think that'd be great. And now, do you think that your single-mindedness was so amazing and so startling? I was wondering if you actually think that's healthy. I mean, it was like beyond the pale what you were willing to do.
Well, I don't know. I just feel like that was my life, and that is what I was supposed to do. And I feel really fortunate right now that I did everything I did, because now I'm able to hopefully help the Innocence Project. I do work for them anyway. I try to help New York with policy changes and Boston with actual clients. And now this movie hopefully will let other people see that there are innocent people in prison, and perhaps that will help get free more innocent people.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great commercial, if you will, for the Innocence Project. I mean, hands down. Now, was there in the movie, I think Tony did a nice job of suggesting that your brother might not necessarily be, pure as the driven snow, that he might have even been able to commit murder. You, on the other hand, I'm assuming, did you ever have any doubts? Did you?
No, I never had any doubt. I always knew Kenny was innocent, and
How did you know?
two reasons. One, I know Kenny, and if you see the movie, you'll see the many sides of Kenny, and they're all true. But Kenny never knew how to handle a situation if he's confronted with somebody wanting to fight with him. He would fight back. Mm-hmm. But he's not the aggressor. He's not going to walk up to anybody else and start a fight. And he's certainly not going to walk into someone's home and kill them for money or jewelry or anything like that. So that's one reason. And the second reason is because it was my neighbor that was murdered. And I drove the hour and a half away from where I was living to find out what happened, only to find out that the police had questioned Kenny because he has a police record. And Kenny had a perfect alibi. He was in court that morning for assaulting a local police officer. And I have to say, this is the first time I was ever happy that he was in court. Because I'm thinking, he has a perfect alibi, and everybody knew he was in court. And he was checked out for everything, scratches, because the perpetrator blood at the scene. He wasn't arrested until 2.5 years later.
Yeah.
And a lot of the evidence went missing. So I knew from the evidence and from knowing Kenny that he was innocent.
So I've got tons of questions I'd like to ask you, but I'm going to end it with this one. What is it like seeing your life? I mean, you've lived 40-some years of your life, and you've just seen 2 hours of it up on the big screen. What is that like for a normal person like you and me who don't live in the Hollywood world?
I use the word surreal, but I can't think of a better word. It's unbelievable to see it, to see the actors and the jobs that they did. They really portrayed everybody like those are the real people that I'm seeing up there. I'm seeing really my brother on the stage, and it's amazing. Hillary talks and walks like me. It's pretty amazing.
Can you pinpoint any particular thing? There's the difference between our idea of you in the movie and your real life. Is there something that you just said, well, this is how the movie glamorized or somehow changed things?
No, the other thing, the movie had the sequence might be a little bit different than what happened in real life, but I have to say all the feelings on that screen, I felt at one time or another, or knew that somebody that I knew, like my brother, felt those feelings. So I can't think of anything that stands out that would have been different.
That's high praise, I would think, Tony. Okay, I want to direct now to you. You've got this great story, this great cast. I mean, just, down the line. That's the thing. We got Julia Lewis. You're barely in the movie, but you make such a strong impression. It's like this ideal setting. But the thing that I always find fascinating and it may be as much a script writer's point of view as a director, but this idea that you have to take a 40 years of life, turn into 2 hours. I'm always interested in what you leave in and what you take out. And I've got to say, I was stunned when I was reading the production notes that Kenny, who we had been living with, hoping he gets free, dies 6 months after his freedom. How and why would you leave such a poignant fact out of an already great story? But I think it would have even enriched it more. What was the decision making?
Well, Kenny's death was a tragic, piece of news 6 months after his release, and I worked very hard to put it in the movie.
Yeah,
it was in the script for a number of years, and but what I discovered kept running into as people read the script is the movie at the point of Kenny's death took a left turn and became a very dark and bitter experience, and people couldn't recover from it. They went through this extraordinary journey with Betty Ann and Kenny, and when I kept finding myself explaining to people who read the script that no, the movie's not about the futility and bitterness of life. It's about the transcendence of love, even in death and in tragedy. And I frankly wasn't able to overcome that. And so we experimented with taking it out and felt that the script worked much better, that it suddenly made it about something completely different. And even after we'd finished the film, we experimented with audiences of putting it on the end. We have a crawl that tells you what's happened.
Yeah.
And when we put up, a piece of information about Kenny's death, people would kind of freak out.
It would wipe out
and they'd say, you wiped out, I had all of this feeling about what this movie's about. And then you say he died. And given now the internet, and we're talking about it now, it's a fact of life.
Yeah.
So the information is out there, but it's really, as Betty Ann and I, discussed, and Hillary and I talked at length about it, it's not actually what the movie's about. So it was a very complicated, thoughtful process that I went through to make that decision.
Another issue is the Melissa Leo's character. I have this sense, if you're just based on audience reaction, I wanted to see her after the DNA came out. In effect, if there's a villain in your piece, it's that character, but we never get to see her under the thumb of reality. The last time we see her, I think she's saying, "I'm sorry, your brother is guilty," and that's it.
That's the truth.
But was there a follow-up story? I assume
no. The truth is that Nancy Taylor, nothing has happened to her. She's living a retired grandmother in Massachusetts, believing that DNA evidence is bunk and that she was correct, even though it's, after an 8-year fight, after Kenny was proven innocent, Betty Ann and Barry Scheck won a civil suit proving that Nancy Taylor had lied.
Wow.
And that Kenny was innocent, and they won a civil settlement on it. But Nancy Taylor refuses to accept that or acknowledge it, and she's never been subject to criminal prosecution. So for me to add an addendum, the fact that it was left hanging, we say at the end of the movie she was immune from criminal prosecution. So I wanted to make people angry.
Yeah, okay.
Because that's simply
that
the
worked
truth.
Then. I think that's good. And now just switching hurriedly, I could talk to all of you for an hour each, but I have to do this in a hurry.
Yep.
You're the closest thing that we have to a villainess, I guess, in this movie. It's such an amazing role, and the thing I liked best about it was, and I don't know if you'll agree with this,
okay,
you have the best vocabulary in that movie, and even though the story is a very somber movie, it's inspirational, but the subject matter is so serious, and your role is kind of unfortunate, I guess.
Yeah.
But you provide a kind of comic relief. At least that's the way I felt about that. And I was just wondering if how did you play it? Because man, you were just on the mark.
I think it's people are in the comfort of a movie theater, so it's safe to laugh at delusion. You're watching a delusional person, So I never intended it to be comical.
Yeah.
But she is funny just in spite of herself in this sense. I must say, all the vocabulary, the misuse of phrases, that's all her. Her dialogue is all
all taken from transcripts of interviews that she gave that were put together. So that's the way she spoke. And for me, it was amazingly informative, and to just sort of bounce around in her head, going through different stories that she would tell, from feeling remorseful to feeling vengeful to Nancy Taylor. And then at the end, you find what she's really about, which is self-preservation. And am I going to get in trouble? Because that's what I care about. But for me, this was a role of a lifetime. I don't care how small it was, because I've never transformed so completely on camera. And it was just a thrill, you know. I want people to, and people have told me as much, where they say, oh, I didn't know that was you at first. They're just like, who is that awful looking person? But it's not about, it's all based in reality. I want to play this aspect of humanity, you know.
And I trust, did you ever meet her, or is this based, you based everything on transcripts?
On transcripts, and the fact she's an alcoholic and never leaves her trailer, and you know, you're intuiting all this information and putting it together. And everybody on this project was really into the honesty of things. So the makeup and hair department, nobody wanted to. You didn't need to exaggerate the facts. So, and then when Betty Ann wasn't working, she wasn't on set the days I was working. So I talked to Barry Sheck a bunch to get more information about her personality a little bit, how erratic she was. And then at the end, when I met Betty Ann, I said, can I just tell you, because I want to make sure, did we take creative license visually? Because I know as an actor, I wanted to look as far away from myself as possible. And I said, was she really that much of a mess and stuff? And she said, worse. So I said, okay.
Yeah, that's great. And can you defend your character? I mean, usually actors tell me that no matter how dark the character, you have to sort of get inside
not judge,
them and justify
right.
themselves.
Absolutely, when you're playing the person. But
and how did you get there?
It's just my natural curiosity since I was little in acting, where you wonder what makes that kind of person tick, and you want to get inside their skin. I'm very physical, so for me it was just, what does that feel like just to be even drinking every day for 10 years or whatever. But I was going to say, Benny, it's unfortunate because she's a destructive person. You know, she's not evil to the core, but she destroyed lives, and that's the fact of it. So I, as Juliet, know this information. Yeah.
Yeah, and you were railroad.
Yeah, good for you.
Okay, listen, we got to rush across.